chosen ones. This is not a drill. What you're about to hear was never meant to reach you this early. And yet here you are, not by accident, but by divine interception. The first week of September hides a classified spiritual operation, a celestial secret so powerful, so timeline-altering. It was concealed from even the most awakened souls, but something has shifted. A seal has been broken. And if you're watching this, it's because heaven wants you to know, now, from the 1st of September to 7th, the entire blueprint of your destiny is undergoing recalibration. This is not a wave. It's a cosmic sorting system, a test disguised as a week, a maze designed to expose the loyal, the pure, the truly chosen. Miss it, and you don't just miss a moment. You miss the door that doesn't reopen. So, before we go further, pause. To every soul who has supported this channel through super thanks, you are part of why this message is reaching who it must. And to the rest of you, if something in your spirit is trembling, comment 777 now to anchor yourself to this transmission, because spiritual alignment is not optional this week. It's urgent. And now, ask yourself this: why was this hidden? Why were you not supposed to know? Until now, stay with me. The revelation begins, and your role in it is far greater than you imagined. God's chosen ones. The first week of September hides a secret you were never meant to know this early. The pressure you've been carrying, it isn't anxiety. It's not overthinking. It's spiritual gravity, a metaphysical compression field pulling on your soul because something divine is nearing. This week hasn't just approached, it collided with your timeline. The atmosphere around you isn't just tense, it's electrified. As if the veil between realms is thinning, because it is. You're not imagining it. You're not overreacting. You are standing at the spiritual equator, where heaven's architecture exerts its strongest force not from above, but from within. From the 1st of September to 7th, you are not walking through days. You are navigating a celestial algorithm, a cosmic equation written long before you were born. The 7th of September, the peak of the Lion's Gate portal, isn't just another spiritual event. In most years, its opening was like a lighthouse in the night, visible, but passive. But this year, it erupted like a frequency bomb. This portal was not just open, it was activated, augmented, and alive, resonating at a higher hertz, sinking to your inner field like a divine tuning fork. And then, just when you thought the pressure had climaxed, came a second shock wave. No pause, no breath, no silence between the beats, just like the shock compression phase in astrophysics, where a dying star implodes before exploding into a supernova. Your soul is being pressed to release its truest potential. Every thought becomes heavier. Every decision feels irreversible. Every hesitation echoes louder in eternity. That's why this week feels suffocatingly fast, eerily still, and violently holy all at once. Be sober. Be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Echat Peter Chamesh, Shmona. Because, dear one, a war has begun, not with swords, not with fire, but with choices so subtle they masquerade as instinct. A war where attention is the battleground and frequency is the weapon. You are not waiting for your destiny, it is forming now. In silence, in your scrolling, In that hesitation to pray, in your reaction to that text, in the sigh after that conversation, every micro decision this week is a spiritual code that aligns you with one of three paths. Have you noticed how your dreams feel more real lately? How your old fears are surfacing again, but with faces you now recognize? Even Jesus, during his 40 days in the wilderness, encountered temptation not through grand gestures, but in moments of hunger, doubt, and delay. Matthew 4:1-11. He was tested with, if you are the Son of God, just as you are now being tested with, if you delay, if you stay silent, if you forget who you are. Do you understand the implications of a timeline shift disguised as a normal day? Imagine three roads emerging invisibly beneath your feet, each reacting to a different vibration within you. One leads to a plateau safe, repetitive, numb. The second to slow erosion, a decay so gradual you mistake it for peace. But the third, that one burns. It costs, it transforms, and it's the one few choose consciously. Why? Because it requires shedding skin that still feels like yours. Choose you this day whom ye will serve. Joshua 24:15. Your future is not waiting to be handed to you. It is waiting to be chosen right now. In private, unseen choices. In the world of business, Steve Jobs, the mind behind Apple, once said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards." He was speaking of intuition. But what if he unknowingly described prophetic alignment? What if every dot you leave this week is a seed that will echo in eternity? Contrast that with the path of Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian countess in the 1602, who sought eternal youth through horrific acts of cruelty. Her choices began as whispers of vanity and pride, but led her to become one of history's most notorious figures of spiritual decay. Her descent wasn't sudden. It was silent, incremental, hidden within everyday decisions. By the time her world noticed, the evil had rooted too deep. What roots are quietly forming in you this week? Do you think the enemy waits for fireworks to tempt you? No. It moves in patterns, in algorithms, in emotional loops, echoing like fractals through your thoughts. Just like a tree in the wild does not choose the wind, but must adjust its growth rings in response. You are forming layers this week. Which ring will this week leave in your soul? One woman, Eliana, a midwife in Jerusalem, once found herself haunted by quiet panic during this very week in the past year. She had no visions, no signs, only the urge to cancel every appointment. She obeyed. That same day, an earthquake struck the lower region where her clinic stood. Not a scratch touched her. She never told anyone. She just called it a whisper of God. That whisper, invisible to the world, shaped her entire lineage. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the way, walk ye in it. Isaiah 30:21. You are in the pressure chamber of spiritual metamorphosis. Think of the diamond, forged under 725, 0.000 pounds of pressure per square inch. But even the diamond is silent until it is cut with precision. The same is happening to you. What seems like pressure is placement. What feels like confusion is course correction. What looks like delay is divine defense. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Jeremiah 29:11. But you must choose the path no one sees, the inner one, the one where you wrestle with angels in silence. Like Jacob at Jabbok, Genesis 32:22-30. who emerged, limping but renamed Israel, God's chosen one. This isn't just another week. This is where timelines, fracture, and legacies are sealed, redeeming the time. Because the days are evil. Ephesians 5 sees the portal isn't opening. It's collapsing, and those still asleep will miss the invitation. You were not meant to receive this message so soon, but heaven has accelerated your access. Because you are needed on the front lines of frequency. Stand up. You are being pulled into position. It won't arrive like a prophecy. You won't hear trumpets in the sky or feel the ground shake beneath your feet. The moment that defines your future might look like nothing more than replying to a message you already know you shouldn't answer. It could be as small as ignoring that tight discomfort rising inside you, the same one that's been knocking at your awareness for weeks. You tell yourself it's not the right time, that you'll deal with it later. But that very hesitation is the doorway. This is how the shift begins. Not with fire, not with clarity, but with quiet, hidden permission, the kind you whisper to yourself when no one is watching. That's how it always begins. The energy of this week doesn't wait for you to declare your direction. It reads your frequency and magnifies it, like resonance in physics, where synchronized vibrations grow louder and more powerful. This week turns casual thoughts into spiritual contracts. What you delay doesn't just hover in suspension, it becomes encoded into your trajectory. If you avoid something now, it doesn't fade, it roots itself and walks ahead of you. That's why the spiritual pressure is rising, especially for those who are sensitive. There's a reason your dreams are louder, your thoughts heavier, your silence deeper. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. If your thoughts are being amplified, then who are you becoming in the quiet spaces where no one sees you? Some, unable to carry the tension, will surrender to autopilot, not because they don't care, but because the weight of waking up feels too relentless. And so, they'll say things like, "I'm just going with the flow," unaware that the flow they're in is not a river of life, but a slow erosion of self. They're not flowing, they're fading, like water assuming the shape of its container. They begin to mold into whatever is easiest to hold. But you weren't built for default settings. You were designed for deliberate alignment. The ones who don't check out will often take a different detour. They'll wrap their avoidance in healing words. They'll tell themselves that their silence is rest, that their denial is intuition. They'll speak of elevation, but in truth, they're escaping. As Scripture warns, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. True transformation doesn't dress up discomfort in spiritual language. It sits with it, confronts it, and lets the breaking become birthing. And still, others will call their stagnation peace. They'll confuse the absence of motion with the presence of maturity, but peace isn't the absence of pressure, it's the presence of clarity in the middle of it. Ask yourself, what if the decision you quietly avoid this Thursday becomes the one that shifts your alignment for the next 7 years? What if your refusal to confront something now causes heaven's offer to pass you by silently, without fanfare, never to return? To him who knows to do good, and does it not, to him it is sin. James 4:17. In weeks like this, silence can be disobedience. Even nature doesn't lie. The seed that refuses to break open doesn't remain safe. It begins to rot from the inside out. Growth never feels safe because it begins with rupture. Likewise, you're not being asked to leap into clarity, but to lean into honesty, because what's at stake is not a single outcome, but your entire resonance. This week acts like a tuning fork, and every action you take, every hesitation, Every whispered excuse becomes part of the chord. Your life is singing into eternity. There's a phenomenon in architecture where tension is used not to destroy a structure, but to reveal its true strength. Just like an arch only becomes stable once pressure is applied evenly across its curve. You too are being shaped by resistance. That ache in your spirit is not punishment. It's alignment, trying to take form. But alignment never arrives without friction. Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give you light. Ephesians 5:14. The tragedy is not when pressure comes. The tragedy is when chosen ones mistake numbness for surrender and go silent when they should stand up. Because what if your delay is not just a pause, but a path? What if it's not just postponement, but partnership with a reality you were never meant to walk in? He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. Luke 16:10. The stakes this week are measured in milliseconds, in choices so small they go unnoticed. But heaven records them. Eternity watches. What you decide now is not just about you, it's about the frequency your lineage will inherit. There is no neutral ground in moments like this. No such thing as figuring it out later. Later is being written now, coded in the spaces where you either engage or ignore. You're either ascending into alignment or descending into inertia. And the most dangerous descent is the one that feels like stillness. Just like entropy, the scientific principle that systems tend toward disorder unless energy is added, your soul must be intentionally fueled this week. Otherwise, the current of passivity will begin to erase the lines heaven has drawn for you. Remember this, even water flows down, but then there's the third group, the rare ones, the ones who don't numb themselves with distractions or disguise their avoidance as spiritual growth. They don't float above reality or melt beneath it. Instead, they sit in the burn, even when it stings, even when it feels like their skin is being peeled away by truth. They don't flinch when the mirror of awareness starts to show them what they'd rather not see. And that's what sets them apart. These are the ones who, no matter how tempted they are to run, stay. They remain seated in the discomfort until it teaches them something their comfort never could. They begin to see things clearly, soberly, undistorted, and clarity is a one-way door. Once your eyes open to what's really been guiding your choices, who's been draining your energy, and what you've been silently aligning with, you don't get to unsee it. You can't go back to autopilot. The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. Matthew 6:22. But are you ready for that kind of sight? The kind that requires change? Not just awareness? There's something terrifying and holy about realizing your future won't arrive as a prophecy or a promise, but as a pattern. It doesn't announce itself. It waits, quietly, to see what you choose to embody when no one's watching. You don't manifest your destiny through good intentions. You sculpt it through consistent alignment. That's why, while everything around you shakes, breaks, and shouts, your greatest power is found in remaining still, not frozen, but rooted, just like a cathedral foundation, tested by storms, but unmoved beneath centuries of pressure. The most magnetic energy this week is not found in the loud or the visible, but in the stable, the quiet ones, the ones who are neither controlling the chaos nor escaping it. They don't need to post about their alignment. They simply live it. They don't scream peace, they emanate it. And in doing so, they are becoming spiritual stabilizers. Gravitational fields around which others begin to orbit. Not consciously, not deliberately, but naturally, as if drawn by some invisible law of soul mass. Do you realize how rare that is? In psychology, we call it affective resonance, the ability of calm, emotionally regulated individuals to alter the nervous systems of others simply by being in proximity. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah 30:15. When others begin to lean on you, not because you demand attention, but because your presence quiets the storm in them, that is when you'll know your alignment is working louder than your words ever could. That's why the call this week is not to perform, but to anchor. Your silence is not emptiness, it's architecture. It's the foundation, and that foundation is now echoing through the collective field like a tuning fork in stone. Stillness has become your power. Move. In the classic European film, The Seventh Seal, 1957, directed by Ingmar Bergman. The Knight Antonius Block says, "Faith is a torment. It is like loving someone who is out there in the darkness but never appears, no matter how loudly you call. And yet, he keeps walking." That line captures the ache of the chosen ones this week. You're not rooted because you see everything clearly, but because you're grounded even in the unknown, even in the dark. What if your calm in chaos isn't a personality trait, but a calling? What if your quiet refusal to collapse is what heaven is using as a stabilizing rod for others who are about to fall? What if your invisible strength is part of a divine equation far greater than you've been told? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Matthew 5:9. But peace isn't passive. It's constructed like a bridge suspended in tension, designed by precision, and held by invisible forces. Just as the oak tree is not moved by the same wind that snaps weaker branches, you were made for steadiness under strain. Not because you're immune to pain, but because you've stopped needing certainty to stay standing. That's what separates those who collapse from those who become pillars. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. So while others shout louder to feel heard, you stay still and become impossible to ignore. Your future isn't demanding applause, it's waiting for embodiment. And in a week where noise reigns, your stillness is revolution. And here's where it turns radical. The quieter you become this week, not emotionally numb, but spiritually still, the more things start to move toward you, without force, without performance. There's a frequency shift happening right now, and the still ones are sinking into it. They're not chasing opportunity, they're becoming the gravitational center that pulls opportunity in. The atmosphere has entered a sacred resonance where movement responds not to noise, but to energetic congruence. You'll find that people begin to open up to you. Conversation deepen. Inspiration flows. Not because you're louder, but because you're anchored. In a week where the collective field is cluttered with shouting, scrambling, and showcasing it's the rooted ones whose silence begins to thunder. And this silence isn't emptiness. It's density, spiritual mass. As in quantum mechanics, the greater the density, the more intense the pull. That's what you're becoming, not a seeker, but a signal. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. Isaiah 30:15. But are you able to trust your unseen progress in a world obsessed with metrics and milestones? Stillness this week is not for serenity alone, it's for location. You are not still avoiding the world. You are becoming still so that what's meant for you knows exactly where to land. Just like a lighthouse doesn't run after ships, but stands unwavering through storm and shadow, you are positioning yourself as a beacon for divine timing. But while all this positioning is happening beneath the surface, a trap is being laid above it, and it's so quiet, so familiar, that most people won't even know they've stepped into it. It begins subtly. You're centered, you're focused, maybe even feeling aligned, and then it enters. A small thought, a glance, a scroll, a flicker of curiosity turned corrosion. Suddenly, you're no longer in your timeline. You're in someone else's. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Proverbs 4:25. The danger this week isn't failure, it's comparison, because comparison doesn't just distract, it distorts. Why is it so tempting to borrow someone else's measure of success, especially when yours was finally stabilizing? Why do we surrender our spiritual posture just to weigh ourselves on scales that were never built for us? Comparison, in spiritual terms, is not observation. It's erosion. It leaks energy. It causes misalignment in your internal architecture. The moment you start measuring your delay against someone else's acceleration, you're stepping off your sacred path and into counterfeit terrain. And this misalignment doesn't shout. It whispers, "You feel good," until the wrong glance triggers the wrong loop. You're grounded until a photo or testimony makes you doubt whether your pace is divine or delayed. You're rising until someone else's shine makes you shrink. What you don't realize is, in that micro moment, you've made a subconscious declaration. You've silently agreed that someone else's blueprint is superior to your own, and the universe listens. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. James 1:8. This week, instability isn't emotional, it's energetic. What you focus on becomes your frequency, and frequency forms reality. In physics, we call this resonant entrainment, when a smaller frequency syncs to a dominant one. So if you sync yourself to timelines, not yours, you risk living outcomes never meant for you. You see someone post about rapid manifestation, and instead of celebrating, your inner landscape shifts from gratitude to guilt, from excitement to self-doubt. This isn't just an emotional slide, it's a covenant shift, a recalibration of spiritual allegiance. You've silently said, "I trust their flow more than I trust mine." And the divine realm responds accordingly. You will begin to be rerouted, not as punishment, but as a response. Heaven doesn't react emotionally, it responds energetically. Every thought, every agreement becomes a blueprint that heaven either supports or pauses. That's why this week is not casual. It is precise. Just as an architect calculates tension to support a building's weight, your soul is being measured for what it can carry next. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. Are you guarding your focus? Because that's where your future is being shaped, not in grand declarations, but in split-second permissions. This isn't about ignoring other people's success. It's about refusing to surrender your assignment in order to applaud theirs. What's for them is aligned with their architecture, their foundation, their storm history, their covenant, and none of those are yours. The world is getting louder. Timelines are overlapping, and frequencies are crossing like electric wires, sparking both miracles and malfunctions. But the chosen ones won't panic. They won't race. They'll go quiet, not to disappear, but to resonate. And in that silence, everything meant for you will begin to shift, to move, to arrive. You cannot summon your divine future while obsessing over someone else's direction. You cannot align with your heaven-coded destiny while staring sideways into someone else's story. Spiritual vision isn't just about clarity, it's about focus. And this week, that focus is everything, not because you'll be punished for distraction, but because the energy around you is sensitive, reactive to every subtle agreement you make. Let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee. Proverbs 4:25. If you keep glancing sideways, what are you teaching your spirit to value? Your energy this week is not just attention, it's currency. Every time you spend it on someone else's milestones, watching, comparing, scrolling, reacting, you delay your own acceleration. You dilute your resonance. You shift from creation to mimicry. And creation cannot thrive in mimicry, just like a plant leans toward the strongest source of light. Your energy begins to tilt toward whatever you gaze at long enough. If you focus on lack, you grow roots in scarcity. But if you anchor in presence, life begins to form around you. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart also. Matthew 6:10. Is your heart still in your path, or has it quietly migrated into someone else's journey? So what do you do instead? You root in, you stop looking for cues in noise and begin listening to silence. You pull your energy inward and down, like a tree going deeper rather than taller. Others may run fast, projecting flashes of brilliance, but you move right. You move intentionally. You align, not react. And that choice reshapes your field. In physics, the concept of field integrity determines how strongly a force holds its shape under pressure. Your spiritual field works the same way. When your boundaries are clear and your values are reinforced through stillness, nothing can seep in that isn't aligned with your elevation. This is not detachment, it's devotion to the architecture of your calling. This week, you'll see many who look radiant on the surface, loud energy, sparkling declarations, bold manifestations. But do not mistake performance for power. Not everything that gleams is stable, and not everything that is still is small. Some of the most sacred transformations will occur inside people who barely say a word, who just move differently. There's a reason Scripture tells us, in quietness and in trust shall be your strength. Isaiah 30:15. Because stillness reveals who is rooted, while noise often hides who is hollow. History has never lacked loudness, but it's always remembered by those who chose weight over volume. Take Dietrich Bonhoeffer, for example, the German pastor and theologian who resisted the Nazi regime not with screams, but with steady defiance. He spoke softly, but stood firmly. Ultimately executed for his resistance, his silence carried more consequence than 1,000 shouts. Even his final words echoed eternity. This is the end for me, the beginning of life. Hahn, by contrast. Remember Aaron Burr, the American politician who was once considered a rising star beside Hamilton and Jefferson, obsessed with positioning and public image. He chased influence with no internal alignment, and in his desperation for legacy, he destroyed his reputation and faded into obscurity. A loud life. Would no hecho. He that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. Proverbs 28:26. So the question isn't, how fast are you moving? The question is, what are you aligned with as you move? Are you being pulled by pressure or moved by purpose? Are you quietly constructing a throne for your next level or trying to sit on one someone else built? The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 5:13. Stillness doesn't mean nothing's happening. It means heaven is moving while you hold your position. And this is the posture of the chosen this week. Not explosive, but magnetic, not reactive, but resonant. They don't perform. They radiate. And in their sacred restraint, the unseen begins to shift. This week is not about being seen, it's about becoming undeniable. The 8th of September rolls around every year, and so do the familiar conversations. Lion's Gate portal. The 8 to 8 frequency. The gateway to abundance. The code of cosmic alignment. For some, it's tradition. For others, cliché. It's easy to dismiss it as a trendy spiritual pit stop, just another checkpoint on the metaphysical calendar. But this year, it's different. Not in theory, but in texture. The air itself hums differently. The pressure doesn't build above you, it builds through you. This year, the portal doesn't simply open a door. It presses on your alignment. It doesn't just amplify desire, it tests the frequency it's built upon. This is not a week where you casually write down what you want and watch the universe wrap it in gold. This is a spiritual audit, a vibrational scan. The energy around this portal is coded not for wishes, but for witnessing. You will be witnessed not by others, but by the unseen realms, and what you release this week will carry the exact signature it's born from. If your intentions are rooted in fear, in lack, in mimicry of someone else's timeline, the portal won't multiply that. It will press against it until it dissolves, like a lens that only reflects what's real. This gateway is not enchanted, it's engineered, spiritually engineered to test authenticity. Every plant that my Heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots. Matthew 5:10, 3:10. What you've forced, copied, or rushed into being, it won't hold. But if you've done the sacred excavation work, if your desire comes from a place that's been forged in fire, not borrowed in trend this week, may launch it with more force and speed than you thought possible. In quantum physics, we call this coherent convergence, when multiple aligned forces meet at one point to accelerate momentum. That's what this portal offers, acceleration. Yes, but only for those in alignment. Does your intention this week come from clarity, or from craving, from identity, or from impulse? Because intentions made during this window don't just linger, they stick. You'll begin to see motion happen faster than usual. Conversations open doors. Delays dissolve, nudges become full pathways. That sentence you wrote, that thought you whispered, it starts to show up. Not years from now, not in some distant alignment, but soon, and sometimes suddenly. Write the vision, and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Habakkuk 2:2-3. This week is about that appointed time, but there's a twist. What shows up first may not be the thing you asked for. It may be its imitation. You will be tested by the near miss. The almost perfect job, the almost right relationship, the offer that feels just enough to convince you to settle. These are not attacks, they're reflections, designed to reveal whether you trust the slow unfolding of real alignment, or whether you're still chasing relief dressed as reward. How many times have you said yes to something close enough, just to later realize it was your own hunger that blurred the lines? This week, imitation comes before manifestation. Just as shadow reaches the ground before the person arrives, the counterfeit appears before the blessing. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. 1 John 4:1. The ones who are clear will wait. The ones who know their resonance will pause, because they understand this law. The first arrival is not always the true assignment. Clarity is not optional this week. It is the compass. The portal will not do the choosing. You will. And what you choose determines the current you ride for the months ahead. Like in music, the original frequency determines the harmony, and this week is a resonant pitch that either tunes you upward or throws your entire field out of sync. What will you call it this week? What will you name and claim and energize, not with hashtags or declarations, but with presence and purity? Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs 18:21. This portal is listening, not to what you say, but to what you align with. So if you're going to manifest, don't do it from trend, from thirst, or from haste. Anchor yourself in the steady voice that has been with you through every storm, the one that never shouted, but always knew, the one that stayed when the timelines shattered. That voice is the birthplace of your real desires. That is where the gate opens widest. And when it does, don't flinch. Don't chase. Don't question. Just walk through, eyes forward. Frequency firm. Destiny activated. You don't manifest what you wish for. You manifest what you mirror. The universe doesn't respond to hope. It responds to harmony. And in a week as energetically charged as this, alignment isn't just beneficial, it's foundational. You can't walk through this portal by accident. You must meet it with deliberate congruence. Because in spiritual law, your life doesn't reflect what you want. It reflects what you are willing to match consistently, consciously, unapologetically. This week, matching frequency isn't some vague vibe. It's a covenant. It's an agreement between your outer actions and your inner reality. What you permit into your space, your focus, your language, your thoughts. Even the small rituals you repeat, these are not just patterns. Right now, they're invitations. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6. What are you sowing through repetition this week? Have you been moving as if your desires are inevitable, or as if they're still auditioning for your attention? Because now is not the time to wait. It is the time to name what you carry. Write it down like you're signing a divine decree. Speak it aloud like the walls are listening. Visualize it until your body starts behaving like it already happened. Because the portal doesn't need your perfection, it needs your precision. And precision doesn't mean pressure. It means being clear, being whole, being aligned with your assignment instead of someone else's illusion. Yet even with the power of the 7th of September surging through the collective field, this is not the end of the ignition sequence. It's only the first fire. Right behind the lion's gate, just hours later, the full moon rises. And this isn't just any lunar cycle. It's not a soft glow or symbolic closure. It's the aftershock of a spiritual earthquake. The dust from 8 to 8 hasn't even settled. And already another wave arrives, not to test you, but to anchor you. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Psalm 138:8. Could this be the moment when everything you've prayed into alignment begins to take form? This moon doesn't just highlight obstacles, it burns through them. Its light does not ask permission to enter, it floods the inner terrain and reveals every weak root, every half-built structure, every imitation you've allowed to linger in the background of your life. And if you allow it, truly allow it, this moon doesn't just show what needs to go, it evaporates it. But only if you're willing to release your grip on the version of you that created the blockage in the first place. How many times have you prayed for release, while secretly protecting the very thing you asked to be freed from? Imitation will tempt you again, in this moment disguised as comfort, familiarity, or convenience. This is where we see who truly trusts divine timing and who simply wants relief. History echoes this truth. In the 17th century, Oliver Cromwell, the English military leader, rose to power under the banner of righteousness, claiming divine mandate, but instead of aligning with truth, he clung to control. His leadership grew more tyrannical, and though he died in office, his corpse was later dug up, publicly hanged, and decapitated, a national rejection of the legacy he tried to force into being. Control is never clarity. Imitation never lasts. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Psalm Ma'asarim Veshebachat. Right now, you are standing between illumination and integration. You've been given the fire. You've been shown the vision. But what will you do with it? This moon doesn't just offer light. It offers finality. What you choose to hold now will be magnified, and what you release will make room for what was always meant to arrive. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 60:1. So don't waste this moment standing in hesitation. Don't fumble about the arrival of the very thing you've been building for years, just because it requires you to let go of something you outgrew last season. Let the moon do what it was sent to do. Let it clear the interference, expose the imposters, and flood your field with light. Because the ones who walk forward from here, hands empty but heart full, will be the ones who carry the real crown. The full moon on the 7th of September is not just a celestial reflection in the sky, it's a resonance amplifier. It doesn't create new energy. It intensifies what's already in motion. Whatever you've called in, intentionally or subconsciously, begins to gain momentum under this moon. If your intentions were clear during the Lion's Gate, this full moon acts like emotional jet fuel. It infuses your vision with clarity, courage, and quiet confidence. But if your desires were murky, fragmented, or born from indecision, you'll feel it now. The light exposes. It reveals every tangle in your inner wiring, every misalignment you thought you buried. And while that might feel uncomfortable, that is the gift. This moon does not simply illuminate. It cleanses, like a tide that doesn't just rise but pulls debris out to sea. This moon gives you the chance to witness what you've unconsciously been carrying and release it fully. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Psalm 50:10. Could this be the moment your energy finally stops bleeding into what no longer belongs to you? Sometimes the real drain on your spirit isn't the chaos you can see. It's the silent erosion happening in your mind, that background loop you've ignored for months, the grudges you've been rehearsing in your thoughts, the sentence you never got to say, the version of you that still wants closure from a place that no longer deserves access. And then it happens. The energetic cord, the one that's been leaking your vitality, suddenly detaches. You don't always notice it with a bang. Sometimes it's just a lightness. A moment where you realize something that used to control you no longer does. A spiritual exhale. A weightlift. The full moon doesn't ask for a show. It asks for a release. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Achat Peter Chamesh, Shba. What if this is the moment your emotional field returns fully back to you? What if your healing is not something you're building, but something you're clearing space for? You don't need a perfect ritual. You don't need incense or words in the right order. You need honesty. You need to identify one thing that has quietly followed you from month to month, draining you, shadowing you, slowing your signal. And then, in stillness, let it go. Forgive. Close the tab in your mind. Stop reliving the moment that already ended. Release it now, and you'll feel it not metaphorically, but physiologically, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Isaiah 26:3. And here's where discernment becomes essential. Not everyone releases. Some resist. Some refuse to let go. Even when the weight is obvious. King Saul is a painful example. Anointed as Israel's first king, chosen and blessed. He began with promise, but allowed pride, insecurity, and fear of being outshined to grow roots in his soul. He clung to control, refused correction, and eventually descended into madness because you have rejected the word of the Lord. He has also rejected you from being king. 1 Samuel 15:23. Saul didn't lose his throne in battle. He lost it in spiritual disobedience. He kept what should have been released. Are you holding on to something heaven has already asked you to let go of as your inner field clears? The intentions you planted during the lion's gate will begin to move on their own, like seeds beneath the soil responding to spring. You won't have to force growth. You'll notice alignment without effort, synchronicity without searching. The gravitational field around you shifts, and you become the answer you've been praying for. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Psalm 23:20. And here's the secret few will tell you. You don't have to manifest with pressure when you're in agreement with your purpose. When the portal opens and the moon seals, you become the in-between space where miracles root, not because you demanded them, but because you became the kind of soil they could finally grow in. What if the future you've been waiting for wasn't delayed, only waiting for you to become someone clean enough to carry it? This full moon doesn't just complete the cycle, it seals it. It finalizes the energetic contract you began writing during the portal. And if you meet it with clarity, with reverence, with release, it won't just feel like things are changing. It will feel like you've finally caught up to the version of yourself that's been watching you from the future, waiting patiently for you to rise. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? Isaiah 43:19. Sometimes the most powerful healing doesn't need volume or spectacle. It's not found in grand gestures or eloquent speeches. It's felt in the presence that refuses to flinch, in the energy of someone who holds steady when everything else starts to sway. Between the 1st of September and 7th, while much of the attention is still caught up in the Lion's Gate and the 7th of September full moon, there's a second, subtler assignment unfolding. One most people won't even notice. That's exactly what makes it sacred. During this window, someone within your energetic field, a friend, en acquaintance, estrange, perhaps someone you haven't thought about in months, will quietly begin to unravel. Not dramatically, not with a breakdown or a cry for help, but with a soft fracture deep beneath their surface. Their foundation will begin to shift in ways they themselves may not fully understand. And while the world keeps moving, if you're spiritually sensitive, you'll feel it. It won't come in words that scream. It might be a voice note that sounds slightly off, a message at a strange hour, a sudden silence, a subtle shift in presence. There will be no flashing signs, but your intuition, trained by alignment and refined by spiritual discipline, will know. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. When you feel it, the call will not be to fix them. It will be to remain calm, present, rooted, not to react or rescue, but to offer a space where their unraveling doesn't feel like abandonment. This kind of healing isn't about doing, it's about being someone who doesn't panic when others begin to tremble, being someone who doesn't rush to fill the silence but respects it, someone who holds their frequency so steady, it becomes an anchor for someone drifting. You are not their savior, but you can be their reflection. You can remind them through your steadiness that they still have access to peace, that they are not lost, only momentarily disconnected. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:10. What if this is the real assignment of the week? Not what you manifest for yourself, but how you hold space for someone else. What if the stillness you've cultivated wasn't only for your clarity, but also for someone else's survival? And what if, in that moment, your presence becomes their proof that heaven hasn't forgotten them? There's a profound parallel here from the life of Jean Vanier, the Canadian Catholic philosopher and humanitarian who founded the international L'Arche communities for people with intellectual disabilities. In a world that often overlooked or institutionalized the vulnerable, Vanier sat with them, ate with them, listened without judgment. He once said, "We are not called by God to do extraordinary things, but to do ordinary things with extraordinary love." This week, your assignment may not look divine on the outside, but your quiet act of presence might be the very thing that reroutes someone's trajectory. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Ephesians 4:2. This isn't about saying the right thing. It's about being the right presence. Your silence, when rooted in peace, becomes a stabilizing force, and when others lean toward collapse, you become the stillness that steadies their breathing. Not with answers, but with quiet companionship. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. Proverbs 17:17. In times of adversity, people don't need crowds. They need someone who doesn't run, someone who doesn't need the spotlight to show up, someone who listens not just with ears but with spirit. You may never get credit for it. They may never say thank you. But in the spiritual realm, heaven sees what happens when a chosen one stays grounded, not just for themselves, but for another. Let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. Echat John 3:18. Ismona. Because sometimes the most sacred work we do isn't on stage, under lights, or in our journals. It's in the unseen moments where someone was falling and didn't fall because we stayed. Sometimes all it takes is one word, one message, one breath where you don't rush to fix or explain or fill the silence. You simply hold. And in that holding, something sacred unfolds. Their posture softens, their eyes shift. Something inside them reawakens, not because you spoke truth over them, but because you embodied it. Your alignment created a resonance they'd forgotten how to access. That one moment where your stillness didn't collapse in the face of their confusion becomes their first breath back into their own body. This is the hidden weight of spiritual sensitivity, not the glamour, not the gifts, but the responsibility. You weren't called to alignment only for your own peace. You were called so that when others lost the map, they could find it again through your consistency, not your performance, your presence. Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16. But how do you stay lit when no one even notices you're holding the flame? This week, you won't get credit for the energy you stabilize. There won't be a ceremony. No one will stop mid-scroll and say, "You saved me." But they'll breathe differently because of you. They'll move more slowly, feel more safe, shift something internal and not know why. And that's the confirmation, not that they remember you, but that they remember themselves. Have you ever wondered how many people were pulled back from the edge by something you didn't even realize you were doing? Have you noticed how often your calm unsettles chaos, not by challenging it, but by refusing to mirror it? This is what alignment looks like when it becomes a gift, not just a goal, not something you chase, but something you radiate. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5:22-23. And fruit doesn't beg to be noticed. It simply nourishes, but not everyone has walked this path with grace. There are those who had power but used it to manipulate rather than heal. In the late 1402, Girolamo Savonarola, a Dominican friar in Florence, gained massive influence as a fiery preacher calling for moral reform, but over time, his message turned from conviction to control. He led public burnings of books, art, and vanities, demanding spiritual purity, yet his movement was rooted in fear, not freedom. When political tides shifted, his support vanished. He was excommunicated and executed in the very square where he once condemned others. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. Even divine language, when misaligned, becomes a weapon. Your alignment, however, isn't meant to dominate, it's meant to anchor. When you walk into a space, you don't need to command it. You calibrate it. You don't force clarity, you hold space until it rises. And yes, there may be moments where you feel unseen, even unnecessary. But spiritual presence doesn't perform, it permeates. It gets under the skin of someone's spirit and whispers, "You're safe here." And that whisper lingers even when you're gone, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Philippians 4:7. So while the world is racing to be heard, selling answers, offering shortcuts, you'll simply hold your frequency, steady, still, sacred. And in doing so, you'll become the silent shift. No one knows how to describe, but everyone feels. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. You won't always see the fruit, but you'll know, not because they say it, but because something in their eyes will shine a little clearer, because their voice will tremble less, because their walk will have rhythm again. That's when you'll realize you didn't rescue them. You reminded them they never lost the way. This week, there will be moments that feel almost unexplainable, as if someone flicked a switch inside your body and everything recalibrates in an instant. 1 second you're sluggish, foggy, overthinking, overstimulated, weighed down by a fatigue that feels like it's been collecting for weeks. And then, suddenly, for no clear reason, you feel light again. Your mind sharpens, your energy steadies. It's like a heaviness falls off your shoulders. A pressure you didn't even realize you were carrying simply vanishes. It doesn't last long, but it doesn't need to. These are micro recharges, brief moments where the soul sends a surge through your system, not because you sat down to rest, but because you finally chose alignment over avoidance. They don't arrive while you're trying to restore your energy. They arrive the moment you make a decision that reflects your truth. You say no when your past self would have said yes to stay liked. You pause instead of reacting. You take responsibility instead of blaming. You send gratitude in place of resentment. You speak clearly when you used to silence yourself. You hold the boundary you once always broke. You move when you used to freeze. And that's when it hits not as emotion, but as energy. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. Psalm 18:25. Could it be that every time you choose integrity, heaven answers in vitality? These are not emotional highs. They're energetic confirmations, little pulses from the divine system, affirming that your nervous system just caught up to your soul's frequency. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. You'll call it random. You'll move too fast. But if you slow down, you'll realize that boost you just felt didn't come from nowhere. It came because your spirit recognized a moment of truth. Have you tracked these moments before the exact second your body felt lighter without explanation? Do you know what you released just before your mind suddenly cleared? Are you willing to pause long enough to name what you just chose, instead of ignoring it as coincidence? The more you trace it, the more obvious the pattern becomes. You don't need to wait until burnout to receive restoration. You can live in real-time restoration, not because you learned how to rest harder, but because you're finally walking in alignment. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. Strength isn't being added to you. It's being unlocked through you. But not everyone listens to these feedback loops. Some override them so often. Their system eventually numbs out. History holds the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who once had immense clarity, vision, and spiritual instinct, especially early in his rise. But as power increased, so did his compromise. He began violating his own boundaries, stepping into battles that weren't his. Ignoring the natural limits of leadership, his fall didn't come from one moment of failure. It came from hundreds of moments of misalignment. His energy, once magnetic, turned manic. His empire collapsed, not at its edge, but from its core. Pride brings a person low, but the lowly in spirit gain honor. Proverbs 29:23. And just to see what this looks like in modern life, consider the story of Eckhart Tolle, the German-born spiritual teacher and best-selling author of The Power of Now. Before his global recognition, Tolle experienced a period of deep depression and despair. One night, in the middle of his internal breakdown, a quiet shift occurred. He made a choice not from striving, but from surrender. "I cannot live with myself any longer," he said. And suddenly, a question formed within him. Who is the I that cannot live with the self? That moment of awareness was the turning point. He describes it as the unraveling of ego, and within months, his life changed without any external strategy. He wasn't chasing energy. He had aligned with the truth, and the recharge followed. The unfolding of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. Salma v'tisha sara ma v'shloshim. You don't need to push anymore. You don't need to force momentum or manufacture motivation. You just need to choose clearly again and again, and the charge will return. Alignment is the gateway. Truth is the ignition. And the recharge is automatic. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Isaiah 40:29. There is a hidden mechanism operating beneath the surface of this week, a spiritual algorithm, recalibrating not just how others view you, but more crucially, how you view yourself. And the shift doesn't begin with a miracle. It begins with a moment, a single act of self-respect, a boundary spoken without apology, a conversation where, for once, you don't play small. And as subtle as it seems, the atmosphere around you begins to reorganize itself in response. In physics, This is not unlike sympathetic resonance, where the vibration of one object can set another into motion if tuned to the same frequency. Your new vibration is doing exactly that, reshaping how others engage with your presence, even before you say a word. Sometimes, it will show up in the most unexpected places. A coworker who used to ignore your insights suddenly listens in full silence. A family member who once spoke over you finds themselves choosing their words more carefully, or someone you once tried to impress now seems slightly uncomfortable in your presence. That's not rejection, it's resonance, recalibrating. Their spirit feels the frequency shift before their mind can name it. You've outgrown an agreement they didn't know you'd made. Why do people sometimes pull away just when you begin to stand in your truth? It's because authenticity disturbs any environment built on performance. When your vibration shifts, you become like a new gravitational field, and those who orbited your old energy can feel that they no longer fit in its pull. This dissonance doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It's spiritual tectonics at work, a necessary friction when the inner plates of your identity begin to move. The truth is, some connections were only strong because you were silently holding the weight of the dynamic. And when you release that role, the structure tilts, not to collapse but to reset. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. But the deepest transformation won't be what they do. It's what you feel. You'll notice, perhaps in a moment of stillness or during a conversation, that the old version of you, the one who tolerated what was misaligned, the one who avoided discomfort by abandoning self simply, doesn't fit anymore. Like a sacred architectural redesign happening from within, the foundation of your identity, once cracked and patched, is being rebuilt with divine precision. And as any structural engineer knows, once the base shifts, the rest must follow. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. 2 Corinthians 5:17. This is not reinvention. It is a remembrance. You're not building a new house. You're restoring the original blueprint before trauma made the edits. And with that return comes a clarity that doesn't shout. It just stands. There's a moment in the 2007 Austrian film, The Counterfeiters, based on true events during World War II, where the main character, Salomon Sorovich, a skilled Jewish counterfeiter forced to work for the Nazis, quietly refuses to sabotage his own moral compass. He says, "If I lose myself, I've lost everything." It is not a grand speech, just a calm statement in a brutal system. But in that stillness, we see the entire architecture of a soul refusing to bend. Your alignment will speak that way this week. Get, but immovable. Have you ever wondered why certain relationships suddenly feel awkward after you begin healing, as if the old rhythm is playing but you no longer want to dance? And here's the opportunity. When that shift begins, don't shrink to fit back into the old container. You weren't made to live folded. The more stable your spiritual architecture becomes, the more unstable anything built on old terms will feel. And that's the point. You are becoming earthquake resistant, not through control, but through consistency. You shall no longer be termed forsaken, but you shall be called, "My delight is in her." Isaiah 62:4. Let your life this week be a kind of still architecture, like the flying buttresses of Gothic cathedrals, designed not to move, but to hold the tension of both heaven and earth without cracking. That is the weight your presence now carries. And when the world senses it, it adjusts, either aligning or exiting. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. Proverbs 4:18. But here's the mystery buried in that verse. The morning sun doesn't rise all at once. It breaks slowly through layers of shadow, scattering light inch by inch until the whole landscape is transformed. And so it is with you, your clarity, your conviction, your purpose. They may begin as a flicker, but each time you choose truth over approval, alignment over convenience, that flicker expands until one day, without fanfare, you become the warmth someone else leans toward. You become the light that reveals, not because you tried to shine, but because you refused to dim, just like dawn. It was never loud, but it was always coming, because the energy moving through this week isn't just adjusting how people treat you, it's accelerating the resonance of your presence in ways that bypass logic. Your credibility isn't being built through effort anymore. It's being sensed, in rooms you haven't entered yet, in conversations where your name is brought up without your presence. There's something in the unseen now confirming what the seen has taken years to catch up to. And if you move through this portal with integrity, not ego, you won't need to convince anyone. They'll simply know. The shift will speak before you do. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. Proverbs 22:1. And this week, the value of your name isn't being negotiated. It's being revealed. That's the strange power of spiritual velocity. The faster you align with who you truly are, the more reality around you must either adjust or release. You won't need to announce yourself loudly, but you will be tested on whether you're ready to walk through the portal of perception or keep pretending it's not real. Do you dare to let people see you for who you've actually become, not who they remember? This week doesn't care how many books you've read, how many mantras you chant, or how peaceful your Instagram feed looks. It's not measuring aesthetics, it's scanning for authenticity. It only wants to know one thing. Are you here to reinforce the old system, or are you here to shake it to its foundation? Because right now, neutrality has expired. The fence is gone, and every delay will be registered by the frequency you're emitting. In architecture, a structure either absorbs pressure and flexes, or it cracks. You were not made to bend indefinitely. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. Deuteronomy 30:19. Choice is not an abstraction this week. It is the architecture of your new timeline. This is not the kind of week where you wait to see what happens. That strategy belongs to a version of you that no longer exists. If you coast, you'll fade. If you hesitate, the window closes. And if you're waiting for someone else to validate your timing, you've already missed it. This week is measuring for presence, not polish. It's watching for conviction, not choreography. If your voice trembles but speaks truth, you win. If you stand quietly but stand tall, you win. This is not about image. This is about embodiment. The eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. 2 Chronicles 16:9. And commitment isn't emotional, it's observable. What if this moment you're standing in is not just significant, but sovereign? Now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. 2 Corinthians 6:2. The transformation is not coming later. It's happening now in real time, as systems in your life begin to bend toward your alignment or away from it. Relationships will either come closer or dissolve without conflict. Conversations will either flow or fall flat. Your career may show signs of quiet redirection, or hidden opportunities may rise that seem to come from nowhere. It's not chaos, it's divine sorting. And it's showing you clearly whether you're calibrating into your future or subtly collapsing to protect your past. And here's the hardest truth. Most won't notice they've already made the choice, because it doesn't happen in dramatic declarations. It happens in the pause where you stay silent when you should have spoken, in the meeting where you downplay your knowing to stay palatable, in the moment you delay action until you feel more ready, even though your spirit was already lit. That's where it's decided. This isn't about being loud. It's about being undeniable. Your life doesn't need fireworks this week. It needs presence. Anchored, bold, unapologetic presence. And whether the world applauds it or not, heaven already recognizes it. You can't slip through this window with half-truths and polished masks. The energy moving now doesn't respond to performance. It demands precision. This isn't a season where you can whisper your way into alignment. You either walk in your integrity like armor, or you dissolve into the background noise of your own potential. And background noise doesn't shift timelines. It barely echoes. But here's the real test. What version of you are you still performing to protect? What's being asked of you now isn't polish. It's presence. Not the curated version of you that pleases rooms and pacifies expectation, but the unfiltered, unmuted current of who you actually are. This isn't about being digestible. It's about being undeniable. There is a sacred difference between ego and sacred selfishness, and this week will expose who knows the difference. Sacred selfishness is not narcissism. It's spiritual stewardship. It's what happens when you treat your time, your clarity, your frequency as resources heaven entrusted you to protect. It's when you refuse to abandon your internal altar to maintain someone else's comfort. Abu-else. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. This isn't cruelty. It's consecration. And in this window, visibility equals velocity. What does that mean? The more visibly, clearly, and unapologetically you arrive in your truth, not as a brand, not as a narrative, but as a reality, the faster divine coordination begins. Energies are organizing around boldness now. The portal does not respond to potential. It moves for people who have already decided. Not perfect people, but precise ones. You weren't born to repeat someone else's rhythm. You weren't called to echo the frequency of the past. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. And the renewal comes through action, not daydreams. If this was the week where your future was listening, what would you actually say? If your alignment had already been approved in heaven, how would you carry yourself on earth? Would you still hesitate to speak the truth that's been burning in your chest for years? Would you still cling to old permissions from people who never truly saw you? There's a reason why silence won't work anymore. Because there are also those who, like Balaam in the book of Numbers, once called by God, but later, corrupted by the lure of status, chose to sell their voice for comfort. Balaam was a prophet, but he compromised his anointing for the approval of kings, and in doing so, he lost his clarity, his credibility, and eventually his life. Numbers 22:24. That's what happens when divine purpose is traded for personal gain. It collapses under its own weight, and that warning lingers in the spirit this week. If you silence your gift to please a system you were sent to disrupt, it will cost more than you realize. This week has watchers, helpers, forces waiting for the green light in your voice. And here's the revelation. This is the green light, but only for those who treat it as sacred, not symbolic. There's no more space for performance. The energy ahead will not support smallness disguised as humility. The righteous are bold as a lion. Proverbs 28:1. And boldness isn't just volume, it's alignment embodied. If you show up halfway, you'll vanish in the noise. But if you arrive whole, the universe will rearrange to reflect your presence. This is not the week to intellectualize your potential, to analyze it like a theory in waiting, or scribble circles around it in your journal. This is the week to embody it, to activate it like a divine current running through your spine. Say the thing, do the thing, send the message, make the move. Not because the circumstances are perfect, but because you've finally decided that your future is too costly to be postponed by your fear. Faith without works is dead. James, Shetaim, Sheba, Asra. And in the architecture of destiny, intention without motion is just a beautiful ruin uninhabited, echoing, forgotten. If you're still waiting for confidence to crown you, you're missing the truth. Clarity comes from movement, and readiness is rarely a prerequisite in the kingdom. It is often the result of obedience. So don't just make it through the week. Don't just tiptoe around your calling and hope the heavens hand it to you more gently. Stand up in it. Walk like someone whose spirit has already been marked. Speak like your voice is the tuning fork heaven listens for. Interrupt the pattern of your old self so fiercely that even your doubts don't recognize you anymore. If the divine is watching, not for perfection, but for participation, what are you still waiting for? Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 61:1. This moment isn't here to soothe you. It's here to see you, to test if your convictions are stronger than your comfort, to ask if your identity will finally outrun your excuses. Because this isn't about inspiration, it's about ignition. And the only question left is, will you let it? Or will you shrink back and watch your turning point pass disguised as just another day? If you've made it this far, it means something in your spirit. Recognize the weight of this week. It's not just another shift. It's a divine checkpoint. A moment where timelines bend not because of force, but because of frequency yours. This is not about doing more, but being more honest. Not about rushing ahead, but about anchoring deeper. Heaven is not waiting for perfection. Heaven is waiting for presence. And maybe you don't have it all figured out. Maybe you still doubt if you're truly one of the chosen. But if you're still here watching, listening, feeling every word, that's your confirmation. You were meant to hear this. You are not behind. You're right on time for the destiny that was designed with your name on it. So walk forward, not with fear, but with faith. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5-7. And in case no one has told you lately, your clarity is needed, your presence is power, and the spiritual realm is waiting for your yes. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and comment 777 below if you're ready to align with your higher calling. If you've supported the channel through super thanks, thank you from the bottom of my heart. But even if you simply watched in silence, your presence is deeply appreciated. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Next, we're just getting started. Until then, may you walk boldly, love deeply, and remain anchored in the truth of who God called you to be. Blessings and protection over your path. See you in the next message.